First, financial concerns at the state and local level. In Baltimore City, critics are questioning millions of dollars spent or sent to nonprofits.
Some of these nonprofits feel like a little bit like Al Capone or something along those lines.
America, Minnesota was just the first domino to fall, and now Baltimore is next. We're watching the exact same nonprofit fraud scheme that stole over $1 billion in Minnesota play out in real time in Maryland. And the numbers are absolutely staggering. We're talking about $56 million in taxpayer dollars flowing through a nonprofit with zero transparency, one employee, no website, and a listed address that shares an office suite. But here's the kicker. This is happening across every Democrat-run city in America. These politicians create BS programs, hand out millions to politically connected nonprofits that don't actually help anybody, while legitimate organizations that want to help get nothing because they're not embedded in the political class. This is the I'll scratch your back, you make me rich grift that's destroying American cities. And Governor Wes Moore and Mayor Brandon Scott are about to learn how to dip and dodge media questions like Timmy Tampon Walsh, Ilhan I Married My Brother Omar, and Brandon Mohawk Johnson.
The governor awarded more than $15 million to nonprofit groups, which he says hold the key to getting this city cleaned up.
What is up, guys? TYSON DELACRUZ here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. Baltimore is about to become another poster child of how Democrats use nonprofits to funnel taxpayer money to fund their friends while their city collapses. Let me start with the most egregious example of Baltimore's nonprofit fraud, an organization called Connections Through Life that received $56.6 million in tax dollars despite having no website, one employee, and zero transparency.
A Maryland nonprofit that received tens of millions of taxpayer dollars through Baltimore City has a series of transparency concerns that are raising alarms from some accounting experts.
This nonprofit was granted tax-exempt status in December 2021 and started receiving taxpayer money just 9 months later in September 2022. Think about that timeline here for a second, guys. From zero to $56 million in less than a year. That, my friends, is not organic growth. That is political connections.
The nonprofit does not appear to have a website. Its latest tax form for 2023 only names one employee or board member, Antoine Anderson, who is described as the president working 20 hours a week with no listed salary.
The nonprofit's listed address is in a suite that shares with the owner's for-profit firm. This, my friends, is textbook money laundering disguised as a nonprofit.
Amanda Beck is a professor at Georgia State University who specializes in nonprofit accounting and reporting. She said the lack of information about how Connections Through Life operates potentially enables a mismanagement of taxpayer dollars.
When you put tens of millions of tax dollars in the hands of non-transparent, non-elected officials, the potential for mismanagement and unfair allocation is absolutely massive. This is exactly what happened in Minnesota with the Feeding Our Future fraud scheme. And let me show you how Baltimore is following the exact same playbook that allowed Minnesota's billion-dollar fraud to happen.
In sort of a public stewardship sense, you would think that we would be able to track these dollars more easily.
In and of itself is lacking in transparency as it relates to where those grant dollars have been funneled through.
The nonprofit's tax form lists 17 grantees, but doesn't include how much money each received, which is an IRS requirement. Plus, they haven't even filed their 2024 tax form that was due back in May. This is the same lack of oversight that allowed Minnesota's fraud to continue to happen for years.
Erica Harris is a professor at Florida International University who focuses on nonprofit accounting and governance. She expressed concern about the lack of response from Anderson's organizations.
When a nonprofit handling $56 million in taxpayer funds refuses to respond to basic questions about their operations, that's not just sketchy, folks. That is evidence of fraud. What do they have to hide?
The odd thing about this organization is that it appears that all the grant monies are going to HIV organizations, but then like the overall mission of the nonprofit doesn't have anything even to do with healthcare.
Here's another red flag, you guys. The nonprofit's stated mission has nothing to do with healthcare. This suggests the nonprofit is just a pass-through entity designed to obstruct where taxpayer money is actually going. But connections through life isn't the only problem. Baltimore has been pumping millions and millions of dollars into nonprofits that aren't even complying with basic state laws.
In Baltimore City, critics are questioning millions of dollars spent or sent to nonprofits that might not be in compliance with the state.
And at the state level, mismanagement could be costing Maryland millions.
Well, you know, each one of these files represents a nonprofit in Baltimore that is not in compliance with state law, but it hasn't slowed the pipeline of public funding. From leaders who say no compliance, no problem.
23 nonprofits have received over $26 million in city tax dollars over the past 3 years. Yet all of them, and I mean all of them, have failed to comply with Maryland's solicitation laws. The state has deemed them all delinquent, but the money just keeps on flowing.
Take, for instance, the Greater Baltimore Urban League. In the past 2 years, the city has pumped close to $1 million into its coffers. But the problem is, it's been years since the Urban League has complied with the laws governing nonprofits in this state. And the state has deemed the Urban League delinquent.
Charm City Care got $946,000. Baltimore Medical Systems received $3.2 million. Project Plays got $10.6 million. All, and I mean all, while failing to file required financial reports.
Nonprofits are required to register each year with Maryland's Secretary of State and file updated financial reports. But we found 23 who appear to have snubbed the state while accepting millions in tax dollars from the city.
Frankly, some of these nonprofits feel like a little bit like Al Capone or something along those lines, where they feel like they can do whatever they want.
This is exactly what I've been talking about, you guys. The grift train, where politically connected organizations get rich while ignoring basic accountability. Now, let me show you what happens to legitimate nonprofits that actually want to help people and follow the law. They get nothing.
In East Baltimore, a transformation is underway.
Got quite a bit of space to help a lot of people, and that's the goal.
This half-century-old building will soon become home to 40 men who are fresh out of prison.
And then we have rooms here. We have one here, you know.
Marlo Hargrove's nonprofit, the FACE organization, provides assistance to ex-offenders.
The FACE organization has been helping ex-offenders for 23 years, providing housing and support services. They're fully compliant with all state laws and regulations, but every single application for the city funding has been denied.
We reached out to Muncie. We reached out to the Baltimore City Hall. And as we reached out, it was like, you're doing a great job. Keep up the great work. Then you see that big old word, unfortunately.
Meanwhile, nonprofits that don't even comply with state law are getting millions and millions of dollars.
I think it's disheartening, and it's a sad situation that organizations, not just the FACE organization, but others as well who's doing phenomenal work, we don't even get a seat at the table and or get recognized.
This is the same system I've seen play out in my own city. If you're not embedded in the political class or working with somebody who is, you get nothing. It doesn't matter how good your work is or how compliant you are with the law. What matters is who you know and who you're willing to kick back money to. Let's talk about what happens when these politically connected nonprofits can't maintain the facade anymore. They just fold and disappear with taxpayer money.
A Maryland nonprofit is planning to end its management services for local charities.
Fusion Partnership announced that they're ending their fiscal sponsor program after more than 2 decades, despite receiving millions and millions of dollars in federal, state, and local taxpayer funds. They operated as a middleman between government agencies and grassroots organizations. A 2022 audit showed Fusion received nearly $1.5 million in taxpayer dollars from multiple federal agencies. But then a 2023 audit found 5 significant deficiencies in how they approved payments and issued financial reports.
Fusion is not the first fiscal sponsor program to fold in Baltimore. Strong City Baltimore folded in 2021 after facing similar struggles, and Thrive Arts folded in 2023 after operating for only 18 months.
This is a pattern. Get taxpayer money, operate for a few years, then disappear when scrutiny increases. For those of you that don't know, let me tell you about the Safe Street program, because this shows how deep the corruption goes in Baltimore's nonprofit system.
State's Attorney Ivan Bates is pushing for transparency for the Safe Streets program after courtroom audio reveals some people may be trying to use their affiliation with the program to their advantage.
We just witnessed 2 Safe Street employees dealing drugs while on the job. Now, Baltimore state attorney discovered that people are falsely claiming that they work for Safe Street in court to get lighter sentences or bail. They are committing perjury by saying that they're violence interceptors when they're not even employed by the program.
Now, because they're not city employees, when you go in front of the court and you're not a Safe Streets worker, but you've said you are, you perpetrated a fraud in the court. Now, my office will have to open investigations to figure out what's really happening.
This is what happens when you create these unaccountable nonprofit programs. Criminals figure out how to exploit them for their personal benefit while taxpayers fund the whole scam. So let me ask the obvious question that Wes Moore and Mayor Brandon Scott don't want to answer. Where's all the money going? We have $56 million flowing through a nonprofit with 1 employee and 0 transparency. We have $26 million going to nonprofits that don't comply with state law. We have fiscal sponsors folding after receiving millions in federal grants. We have people committing perjury to claim affiliation with Safe Street. This is the same pattern that we saw in Minnesota. Create programs with minimal oversight, funnel money to the politically connected nonprofits, ignore red flags and compliance failures, then act shocked when massive fraud is uncovered. The difference between Minnesota and Baltimore is that they're seemingly catching Baltimore's fraud in an earlier cycle. Minnesota's scheme ran for years before federal prosecutors stepped in. Baltimore's scheme is being exposed now, which means there's still a lot of time to stop it. But that requires political will from leaders like Wes Moore, Brandon Scott, and based on their response so far, they're more interested in protecting the system than actually fixing it. They're learning how to dodge media questions from Timmy Tampon Walsh, Ilhan I Married My Brother Omar, and Brandon Mohawk Johnson. Deflect, deny, and accuse critics of racism. America, what we're seeing in Baltimore is the inevitable result of Democrat governance. Create programs with no accountability, funnel money to politically connected nonprofits, ignore compliance failures, and attack anyone who questions the system as a racist. Minnesota was the first domino to fall with over $1 billion stolen. Baltimore is next with tens of millions flowing through fraudulent nonprofits. This pattern exists in every Democrat-run city in America: Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and the legitimate nonprofits that actually want to help people are getting nothing because they're not embedded in the political class. The fraudulent nonprofits that exist only to enrich their founders get millions because they know how to play the game. This is the classic I'll scratch your back, you make me rich system that's destroying American cities. Politicians create BS programs, hand out money to their friends, and everybody gets rich except for the people these programs are supposed to help. Wes Moore and Brandon Scott need to answer one simple question: where's all the money going? If they can't or won't answer that question, then they're actually part of the problem. The nonprofit grift train needs to end now. Federal prosecutors need to investigate Baltimore the same way they investigated Minnesota. Every nonprofit receiving taxpayer dollars needs to be audited. Every politician who approved these grants needs to explain their decision making. Let me know what you think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.